Any questions for our panel members from the first portion? Did you have a question?
And my question is, most tribes are on a 10 to 15 year CFI cycle. Who pays for this CFI? The tribe or the buyer?
Depends on how you set it up. If the tribe is doing the project entirely internally, then the tribe would be paying for the update. There are companies that will pay for project development costs in exchange for percentage of revenue, percentage of credits. So it depends on how the tribe wants to proceed, but it's all up for negotiation.
Our CFI costs $500,000.
Yeah, the projects can be expensive. I mean, depending on the project, you can get up.
You're talking about a 12-year cycle. We're on a 15-year cycle.
The inventory, each inventory plot can be no older than 12 years under the protocol. And so you would have within 100 years.
You can imagine that some of us are under tremendous pressure from tribal members to buy into this program. I am not in favor of it, very candidly, because we are split as a tribe. You say the tribal governing body must consent to this, waiver and sovereign immunity. That is not the case with Menominee. We are separate, managed by a board of directors
From the tribal legislature. So there's a sovereign immunity clause that we can waiver as MTE board of directors, but at this point in time, the three inquiries that we've had have been overly aggressive, I think, in approaching us, and we've said no 3 times, and they have gone to the tribal legislature and presented their cases, which creates political dogma for us at home, and we don't appreciate it. Just as a point that you understand where we're coming from with respect to this. The other, and I may say for the audience here, the reason that we have not pushed for this is our board of directors has come through with the philosophy that we do not support philosophically buying into someone else's pollution problem. We have inherited our lands, take care of them, and we haven't contributed to the pollution problem of greater America. Why should we accept a payment for somebody else's mistakes? So philosophically, we don't agree with it, and I appreciate your information. Thank you. Great, good seeing you.
Thank you, Larry. I saw Vinny had a question over here.
All right, got it. Could you explain to the group the difference between a registrar, a developer? I'm not sure, like is Native Energy a registrar or a developer? New Forest, I'm getting confused on who's what in the hierarchy here.
California state government, the Air Resources Board itself. And the Air Resources Board is accredited offset project registries to provide registry services, which Jessica discussed. ACR is one of those registries. And then there are a variety of consultants and developers who offer a variety of services, and so among that realm, there's a bunch of companies. New Forest, we're a timberland investor. We also finance and develop offset projects. Native Energy is a project developer, and a retailer. Greg's company is a forestry consultant company. So there are a variety of actors in the market, but the project developers are not accredited by the state of California or chosen by the state of California. Those are private companies who are providing services to help access that market, whereas
ACR is accredited to provide services by the state of California and selected through a governmental process. I was going to the gentleman's comment from the nominee. That's a common and very reasonable concern about the market. Is this just letting people pollute? And I think that comes up a lot in discussions. It comes up in almost every discussion I've had with the tribe, but also with a lot of other landowners, because people don't want to be supporting the continuation of or enabling the continued pollution, which is destructive to our collective environment. And that's something that I've thought about a lot as I work on these projects, right? Because you want to be doing some good in the world. I think one key aspect of that is before this system, these companies are polluting for free. They're paying no price for that pollution. And with this system, this is a very significant price for them. And so they're not buying an offset out of the goodness of their heart. They're buying an offset because they're being forced to. And essentially that money is being transferred from polluters to landowners who are voluntarily choosing to manage their forests in a more sustainable way and sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So it's imposing a cost on pollution. And as that cost gradually increases, the pollution is going to decrease. And the system is imposing a very large cost on some of the largest polluters in the world and generating a lot of revenue, not only for these types of projects, but also for investment in some of the real solutions, which will be research into some of the real long-term solutions, which is the research and development into alternative energies. But it's a legitimate debate.
So real simple question. I don't know anything about this carbon stuff. That's why I'm here. Can you prescribe burn if you're under one of these carbon agreements?
You can pretty much do virtually any type of management that you've modeled into your carbon project. So if prescribed fire is part of your land management, then as long as you account for it and you're not burning up your registered stocks, if you've said that and most carbon projects are not registering carbon from trees less than 5 inches in diameter. So if you're doing prescribed fire, for instance, to reduce understory stocking, then you certainly can go ahead and do that. You can burn piles. You just have to account for it is all.
We had a question up front here.
Well, that was part of my question as well, because it seems somewhat of an offset itself by burning your own stock. But Brian, you had said that I guess the ARB had set a goal for 2020, certain carbon output by that stage. How are they coming along? Are they getting close to those levels, or we're getting close to it time-wise?
Yeah, these systems tend to generate more rapid emissions reductions than forecast because you give a price incentive to 10,000 engineers and then people start to figure it out. And so they are on track to meet that target. And there's actually legislation that was passed out of the Senate, I believe, last week in California to set a 2050 target and to authorize the Air Resources Board to set intermediate targets. And I think the likely target for 2030 is quite aggressive. It's a 40% reduction from 1990 levels. And in that situation, like right now, we are forecasting prices to kind of gradually increase through 2020. But if you're trying to target 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, the prices are likely to go up significantly in the 2020s because the easy emissions reductions have already been done, the lower cost ones.
And Jessica, you had provided a kind of a flow chart of intermediary steps for the registry process. What's it? Maybe you had mentioned it and I didn't hear it. For completion of that?
Vary quite a bit, but typically once so the listing application usually only takes maybe 3 to 5 weeks to have approved, sometimes even less. But in order to list, you know, you often have to already have an inventory in place or already have a planned inventory, so it kind of depends on when the timing of your inventory. A lot of times the inventories are being done, you know, right before or after listing. And then after listing is approved, you can begin your verification. You can't begin your verification until your inventory is in place and all of your modeling is done. So the period between listing and verification kind of can vary depending on how, you know, access, you know, depending on the time of year and making sure that you can get that inventory in place and then all of your quantification done. Verification, there's 11 months to complete that. We've seen the majority of projects complete verifications before 11 months, but a couple have actually taken the whole 11 months, but typically we're seeing, you know, 6 to 8 months as the average. And then once a positive verification statement is submitted, it normally takes about 3 to maybe 6 months to have ARB offset credits in your account. Again, I mean, there's a lot of variability in all of these time frames, so I guess we're looking at, you know, up to 2 years, but it can be less.
What is the shelf life of these verifications?
The shelf life of the credits, or? So the inventories, as Brian mentioned, no plot in your inventory can be older than 12 years. However, you know, during verifications, verifiers go in onto your site during the full site verifications, and they resample a portion of your plots, and they you know, they look at a statistical agreement between their measurements and your measurements. So there could be cases where a 12-year-old plot might not have the same measurements as that verifier's measurements. So there might be situations where you'd want a more frequent inventory, but the regulatory requirement is every 12 years.
Just one follow-on note to that, as Jessica mentioned, like the 11-month deadline for a verification from a lot of the Air Resources Board has interpreted their regulations such that a lot of these deadlines are very high stakes. So in the initial registration, you can be issued credits that are worth many millions of dollars, and they've interpreted, for example, that if you don't meet the verification deadline, that all of those credits essentially evaporate, and you can't get them back. And so project management around really timely project management can become very critical in these projects. It doesn't make sense, but that's what the Air Resources Board decided. The trees are still there.
Very true.
So one quick question for Jessica regarding verification in your flow chart as well is, does ACR select the verifier? And if so, are those verifiers familiar with tribal processes and regulations? I know things have changed greatly since we went through verification years ago, but the first time our project was verified with the CCX, it went great, and it took a couple of days and it was done. And the next time it took several months, and the tribe lost thousands of dollars while we educated that verifier to the unique issues of tribal governments. And so I guess my question is whether ACR selects those or
Yeah, I can answer that. So as I mentioned in my presentation, ACR has a voluntary program, and we are also an offset project registry under the California Cap and Trade Offset Program. Under ACR's voluntary program, all ANSI certified verifiers are allowed to verify projects, so the American National Standards Institute. And we do not necessarily require them to be educated in tribal requirements or matters, nor does the voluntary program really have special requirements for tribes like the ARB program does. But we actually, under our voluntary program, we would like to work on some special guidance for tribes, in particular with respect to land tenure issues going forward for the voluntary program. Under the ARB program, ACR does not select the verifiers. The Cap and Trade regulation has special requirements for verification bodies, and then all verification verifiers have to pass a training, an ARB verifier training, and also a a training for each protocol that they wish to verify under. So all of the verifiers of the forestry project will come from an ARB accredited verification body, and each individual will have passed the forest verification ARB training course.
Any other questions?
Dave Bingman from the Quinault Nation. Brian, we've talked to you. Appreciate your visit to us. I have two questions, actually. The California regulations have a requirement of no larger than a 40-acre clear cut. We are in an even age management situation, plus we're dealing with a legacy forest. Do you see anything in the future to relieve that restriction? The second question, I don't know who may answer it. I talked to Greg about this a couple of days ago. Your graphic there showed they have to have compliance and a higher level of compliance over time. That means there's going to be a lot more demand. And now with the supply, if you look at it, can actually be a static supply right now. But as the demand increases, is it better to wait for years when the price per ton might go up? Or is it better to jump into it now? So I'm looking for some recommendations or even education from anybody out there. Thank you.
On the 40-acre clear cut, in general, the protocol has incorporated a lot of elements of the California Forest Practice Rules, and that is not likely to change unless, as Washington State is considering joining the system in the future. And as you get other states joining, there may be pressure through the Western Climate Initiative to make this slightly more accessible to other types of forest management. But I wouldn't see that within the next 5 years or so. Now that said, even landowners who manage with an average 200-acre clear cut or something that's more typical in the Pacific Northwest, you don't have to register a project on your entire acreage, and in fact, we tend not to recommend it to large landowners. And most landowners will have pockets where, for reasons that where the restrictions of the protocol might be a good fit for the silviculture that they practice on that portion of their lands. I have my own thoughts about pricing, but did anyone else? So it is possible that the prices will go up down the road. However, it's a volatile policy space. So there's two thoughts about that. One is that the buy side in this market is very concentrated. If you look at the top 10 purchasers purchase more than the next 100 combined, just because they're the largest polluters. And so right now, I think one of the benefits of participating early is that you establish yourself as a supplier to those top 10 purchasers, where they'll be repeat customers. And they're a lot of the same companies. Quebec has joined the system. Ontario is going to join the system. Washington. A lot of the same companies will have the top compliance obligations in each jurisdiction. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is just your assessment of political risk. Like, is the federal, will the system be overturned by congressional action for a national system, and does that change the pricing structure? And so it's a bit of an unknown as to whether you decide, okay, I can make X million now and then bank part of that for long-term costs and use that for management goals, or do I wait and do it later? Or you can do both, doing a small project now and other projects later, or not at all. But I think I can't offer any, I don't have a crystal ball on that front, but it's like any commodity market, it'll be volatile.
Could one of you talk a little bit more about the status or likelihood of ARB adjusting the baseline based on approved forest management plans?
Yeah, so we've, this came up recently, and we've actually, the Yurok Tribe Legal Counsel, Nathan Bogley, and we asked Gary Morishima to be on a call with ARB about this issue, because so what's happening is ARB is saying, oh, well, forest management plans are binding legal constraints on management. And in our view, that's inaccurate. It's also not how they're treating Option A's under California, which are similar sustained yield plans. So it's discriminatory in my view. But it's just, they don't have the time to think about the issues in detail. They need information, and this is an area where I think ITC could really, regardless of some members of the ITC may participate and some not, but I do think collectively there's an interest in making sure there's a voice as the system grows. I think we're going to win on that issue. I don't think it's because it's just irrational. It doesn't make any sense, and they'll figure that out. But it's still an ongoing discussion. And after that phone call where their resources board lead on this got a lot of information from Gary, they did ask for additional information, in particular a legal memo. So maybe we can chat about that further. But you were speaking about the forest management plan and our intersection with the baseline, right? Not the common practice revision upwards to the FIA.